Hi everybody, it's Jennifer Hoffman. I'm here about a minute early. I just wanted to get started and the camera on, and I moved my furniture around my office so I'm facing a different direction, so I had to get the lighting, and now you won't see my fan turning, which is over there, and instead you'll see my closet door. So thanks for being here. This is your Enlightening Life live version, July. Let me see, what day is today? July 5th, 2018. Actually, today's kind of a special day because my parents were married today, 60 some years ago. And I was born exactly 9 months and 1 week, 9 months and 7 days after they were married. So sometime in the next few days is actually the date of my conception, which I thought was kind of funny. Hi, everybody. Hi, David. Hi, all of you from Europe. You're staying up pretty late. So today I want to talk about a video that I did earlier. I'm going to talk about energy hijacking because that's a big topic right now. We're also going to look at the July energy report. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things that are on my mind, and we're also going to talk about boundaries because I think we need a little review of energy boundaries and what that means for you. So first I want to, again, thank all of you for being here. Hi, Katie. Hi, let me see, Rihanna and Monica. Trying to see, Jamie is watching, Liz, Jen, Renee. Thank you everyone for being here. So let's talk about the July energy report because I think that's the most important thing because we are now on the 5th day of July. If you were in, oh, thank you, Emmy. Yes, my shirt and my little pink t-shirt. So we had the 4th of July yesterday. You know, that's the traditional U.S. Date of the, signing the Declaration of Independence. I went to the event here in Greensboro. So Greensboro has a massive, actually 2-day 4th of July celebration. And it was amazing. There were hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, they estimated that about 120,000 people would show up like on the 4th for Greensboro. They had bands and food and kids and a concert, and the fireworks were delayed because we actually had a big rainstorm. But what I noticed was how happy everybody was. They were walking around, people were having a good time. With a ton of people, you're walking around, you bump into people. People were, and I live in the South, so it's a little bit different, but people were immensely polite. Like I accidentally bumped into somebody, because we were walking kind of close quarters, and I bumped into someone and almost spilled his drink, and I grabbed the drink and I said, I am so sorry if I spill any, I'll buy you a new drink. And, oh, no problem, And it was wonderful to be around like all those people and have everybody getting along and respecting each other, and there was a sense of community, and everybody, there were no fights, there was no demonstrations, there were no protests, there were no riots. I mean, everything was really great. And what's happening in July is that we have a big eclipse period coming up. We have 2 eclipses this month. We have one coming up in August. We have Mercury retrograde. Mars is retrograde. We have 6 retrograde planets this month. So we're coming back to our roots. And also, we're coming back to 1998. So eclipses follow 19-year cycles. And I looked up the eclipses this year that are happening this month. And sure enough, they are the same degree as the ones in July and August of 1998. So what were you doing then? What was going on in your life? What decisions did you make that are now maybe coming up for review? How did you do things then? And maybe you're getting a chance to rethink or redo those decisions now. And interestingly enough, Mercury goes into shadow retrograde the day before the eclipse. So we've got, the eclipses always involve the sun and the moon, and Mercury is retrograde in Leo, whose ruler is the sun. So I think we're going to have a lot of chances to look at things and to, not necessarily rehash the past, but rethink our choices and rethink our decisions, and how do we let me see, how do we do things differently today than we did back then? And that was like 19 years ago. So in the course of 19 years or 20 years, you're looking at a lot of growth and a lot of change. And I know I'm not the person I was 20 years ago, and I'm sure a lot of you aren't either. So let me see. Adrienne says, when's the eclipse? So we have an eclipse July 11th. We have one July 27th. And then we have one, I think, August 11th. So we have 3 coming up. And the one on July 11th, so the one that's next week, is actually a pretty powerful one. And I'll probably be writing about that. So, you know, we grow in cycles, and you know, the whole ascension path is not a straight line. We would like for it to be very linear, you know, go from point A to point B and we're done, and glad that's over. I don't want to do that again. But it's not. It's a spiral, and we go around the spiral, and every time we go around the spiral, we go around at a different level, and we get to kind of look at what we've done and go, oh yeah, I like that. Oh no, I didn't like that. Would I do that again? No, I wouldn't. I want to do something different this time. And that's usually the choice. You look at what you've done and you do something different, because now you're stronger and you are more capable and more confident, and you certainly have the value, you know, the experience under your belt, which lets you know, okay, if I make this choice, this is going to happen. So if I don't want that to happen, then I should probably do something else. Which, you know, your intuition is a really good guide here. So if you really look at a situation and you go, I'm not sure, you know, the best thing to do sometimes is to take a step back and go, okay, I'm going to do nothing right now, and I'm just going to observe, and I'm going to act when I feel confident that it's time to act. Now, that doesn't always work, and that's not always possible, but it's usually possible. And when I say that, I can look back on my life and think, oh God, if I had just, you know, done that at different times in my life when I was faced with choices, and instead of saying, oh, you know, I think I'll take a pass on that. No, being the Aries that I am, I plow forward, and then I have plenty of time to regret it. So Isabel says, what are the do's and don'ts? So for Mercury, right now we have Mars retrograde. So that's already one big retrograde. Mars goes retrograde every couple years. And Mars is retrograde in Aquarius, which is the opposite sign of Leo, where Mercury is going to be retrograde. So, do's and don'ts. Well, for retrograde, it's this, you know, the standard. It's, you know, watch your communications, you know, double check everything, leave extra travel time. If, you know, don't start brand new things. So if you're going to sign a contract, don't initiate the contract or negotiate the contract when Mercury's retrograde, because you'll probably have to redo it, or you might regret part of it, or some part of it might fall through. And I actually asked the question in the July energy report because I really don't know. I mean, I'm not a practicing astrologer, and I'm kind of curious to know if marriages that are done, that are initiated during a Mercury retrograde, if those have less of a chance of succeeding, you know, if they are more likely to end in divorce than marriages that are, you know, done not when Mercury is retrograde. And that would include, you know, starting the engagement and, you know, the day you choose the wedding date, you know, that day, if all that's done in Mercury retrograde, I'm kind of curious to know if that happens. And so Shelley asked the question, why is this all about the planets? It's not about the planets. It's about energy. So we live in a synergistic universe. We live in a universe where everything contributes to everything else, just as my actions have an effect on everybody around me. The things that I do, you know, if you ever studied chaos theory, you know, when a butterfly flaps, it swings in Nepal, there's a, you know, a hurricane like in Florida. I mean, we have to look at our not just our world, but our lives as being a big synergistic organism. So the planets are part of our solar system. They all exact an energy. Look at what happens when there's a full moon. People tend to go kind of nuts. Things that happen under eclipses, you know, eclipses can bring huge changes and in very unexpected ways. So the reason this is such an important cycle is because, number one, it brings back all this energy from 1998. That comes back again, and we're cycling through another cycle. And it prepares us then for the next 20 years. So we'll look 19 years ahead and go, wow, I made this decision back in 2018. Now I get to make this decision again. So we have to look at everything. And when you look at things in separated from each other. So you look at, for example, spiritual energy versus material energy, and you start taking things apart, you end up focusing on things, and you're focusing on little pieces and not focusing on the whole thing. So for example, a client will ask me, how can I be successful? And one of the things that I always ask them is, okay, what does that mean to you? Because you can't say, I want to be successful without having a meaning for success. What does success mean to you? What happens when you're successful? What can you do? What are you capable of? What's going on in your life when you're successful? If you don't have the vision for that and you don't have that definition, then success can come to you and you really won't notice it because you're not defining success for yourself. It's just like, I'll use my famous example of camping. So there are many different ways of going on vacation. There's taking a cruise, driving, flying, taking the train, there's staying in a hotel, and then there's camping. So if you look at, there's, all those are like 5 different kinds of vacation. There's actually 4, because for me, camping is not a vacation. So I don't even consider camping as a vacation. So if you ask me, what do you want to do when you go on vacation? Well, I would say, okay, first, camping's off the table. I kind of get seasick, so I don't think I'd really go on a cruise. And I really don't mind driving, so a road trip is not off the table. And I like to fly, so flying too. But for example, my mother, and I just had this conversation with her today, my mother does not fly. So when my mother talks about going on a trip, it's in the car. It's on the car, it's on a train. She's also terrified of water, so boats are out of the question. And this is true for everything. So if you don't have a definition of what those things mean, then they don't mean anything to you. And you can't set those targets in your life unless you understand what they mean, but what they mean to you. So you have to have a personal definition. Donna says, hello from wintry Melbourne. And I'm going to say hello, Donna, from very hot Greensboro, because it's actually been quite hot here. It was 87 today, but it was rather humid, so it felt much hotter than that. So when we look at our lives, we have to, and this is kind of going into one of the themes of July, which is choice. So we make choices when we have a reason to make choices. So the minute we want change, we open the portals to choice. And this is all in the July Energy Report, which you can read on enlighteninglife.com. Go to the Jennifer's blog, and it'll be the first article there. So as soon as we want change, all these portals open up for us. The portals that say, okay, here are all your options. Which one do you want? Well, that depends on how we've defined whatever it is we want to change. So, for example, if say you want a new job and you say, okay, I just want a new job. Well, a job can be anything. A job can be waiting tables. It can be cleaning hotel rooms. It can be driving a cab. It can be running a company. I mean, there's many, many different kinds of jobs, especially today. So if you don't have that definition, then as soon as you want change, all these choices pop up and you don't know what to do. So when you want change, knowing what kind of change you want and being able to define that helps you limit the number of potentials to the ones that you want, and not having to weed through and go, nah, that's not possible. Nah, I don't want that. So that's another part of July. So your desire for change opens those portals that lets you see all the choices that are available. And this is a big theme in July because eclipses bring change, but also a lot of things are changing. So what we're seeing, and again, if you follow me here on Facebook, I've written for the last couple of days, the energy is like a huge roller coaster. It's up and it's down and it's up again and then it's out. And how do you manage all those changes? Well, you have your intention, and that limits the number of changes you're going to make, but it also keeps the choices to a fairly well-defined range, so that you know that your job's going to say it's about the job, that your job's going to have a certain salary, and it's going to be a certain distance from your house, and maybe you don't want to have a long commute, so you'll look for a job that's, within maybe 20, 30 minutes of your house rather than one that's like a 2-hour drive each way. And I know people who drive 2 hours each way to their job, and they hate it. It's miserable. So the more you understand your range of choices, and the more you've defined what that means for you, the easier it is for you to make choices, because you don't have to cherry pick from a lot of things that are just completely not right for you. And those things will come up too. And this is also about boundaries. And I wrote something on Facebook because I had seen a post from one of my readers and one of my followers, Jules, who said that, and those of you who like me are professional intuitives and energy healers, and you sell these services, where someone said, hey, I want some advice and I just want to talk to you, and the person said, no, you really need to schedule a session with me, and she really wanted that intuitive support. So she ends up like just calling her on the phone and blah blah blah, and starts talking and asking her all these questions, and the person was very upset, but really didn't know what to do. So this is about boundaries. This is about people crossing your boundaries. And I talk about boundaries all the time. And I talk to you about my boundary setting affirmation, which is everyone in my life loves, honors, and respects me. And that's a wonderful way to set boundaries in your life. But that doesn't mean people aren't going to try and cross your boundaries. And I think that's where we get stuck, is we think, oh, I've got these fabulous boundaries, so everyone's going to see them and respect my boundaries. And then the first person who violates your boundaries or tries to cross them or tries to take them down, you'll think, oh, my boundaries don't work. Well, your boundaries do work. It's just that when you have boundaries, it doesn't mean people won't cross them. It means that when they do cross them, you have to pull them in and say, okay, these are my boundaries, and this is where this is where you can act, and you can't act out here, because if you do, I'll just ignore you. I won't pay attention to you. So the idea that boundaries are these things that everyone recognizes and everyone respects them, it's just, that's not going to work, because people will try and challenge your boundaries, mainly because, like kids, they want to see how far they can push you, whether or not your boundaries are really strict, and whether you're going to respect your own boundaries. And if you don't, then people are going to continue to disrespect your boundaries. If you do, they might try once in a while, but they won't try very often. And especially this month, and I'm going to say next month too, you might have your boundaries challenged. And again, it's not that people see your boundaries and go, oh, those don't apply to me, or you'll just change those. I can do that. I mean, I think that's what they think sometimes, or that they'll see your boundaries and go, oh, you've got boundaries, I won't try and cross them. They'll see your boundaries and go, maybe I'm different. That doesn't apply to me. And that's not the case. So in order for you to have strong boundaries, you have to be willing to maintain your boundaries. Now remember, boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping your energy contained, about knowing where your energy goes. So for example, if you have a dog, chances are you have a fenced yard. If you live in a house, you have a fenced yard. Well, why do you have a fenced yard? So if your dog goes out in the yard, it's not going to take off and run out in the street and get itself hurt. You know that the boundary, the fence, contains your dog. Well, in the same way that boundaries contain your energy, so they keep your energy in a place where you can manage it, and where others know the kind of behavior and the kind of energy that's acceptable in your life. And they're really important because they help you manage your relationships. And as I've often said, when you have good, strong boundaries, the people who can respect your boundaries and they aren't a problem for them, they don't have a problem with them. They're great with your boundaries. The people who can't respect your boundaries and who have really who question those, they'll see your boundaries like a big wall that they can't cross, because they won't be able to respect your boundaries. And those are the kind of people you really don't want in your life, because there will always be a challenge over who's controlling your energy, you or them. With boundaries, that control is very well placed, it's very clear where it is, and you don't have to worry about it. So there are a couple things from, I already had this up. Oh, so the other day, if you notice, my office is a little bit different. So the other day I was thinking about, doing some different things and going through my, my calendar and looking for the year ahead. And my guide said, change your office around. So, and I never really liked where my desk was anyway. So I ended up changing my office around and moving my desk, which is kind of hard because my desk is big and it's heavy and I have carpet in this room. So I managed to get my desk moved after a lot of huffing and puffing and got it to where I actually really like where it is now. So the choices. So one of the things we have to avoid making choices, and again, this is a huge theme in July, is trying to make the best choice or waiting for the right moment or making the perfect choice, because there is no perfect choice, like perfect across the board. There's the perfect choice for this moment. And when you make the perfect choice for yourself in this moment, at some point, that choice isn't going to look like a perfect choice, because you're going to look at your choice and go, God, what was I thinking? I mean, those of you who have been married before or are now divorced, and you can raise your hands, you look at that person and you go, oh, what was I thinking? How could I have made that decision? Even though, even if it was 30, 40 years ago, what was I thinking? How could I do this? And the truth is that at that moment you made the choice, it was the right choice for you. In retrospect, now you look back and you think, especially if you're divorced and it wasn't a good marriage, you think, well, what was I thinking? Well, that was it. That's not the choice you would make today, but it was the choice that was right for you then. So try and avoid judging your past choices on the basis of all the experience you have from making that choice, because the only thing that matters at the moment is the present moment. And where's the present moment? It's the one in which you're breathing, because Amy says temporary insanity. It's the present moment is where you're breathing. That's the only moment you have, because you really live from one breath to the next. You can live for several weeks without eating. You can live for, I think, 5 days without drinking. You can live about 3.5 minutes without breathing. Breathing is the first thing we take when we're born. We think of the baby's first breath when it's born, and it's the last thing we do before we die. And all in between, we're breathing. It's the one thing we do all the time, and thank God our body takes care of it for us, because remember, what would it be like if you had to remember to take every single breath? We'd all be like, because we'd all forget to breathe. So the present moment is where you're breathing. It's the only moment you've got. So think about what you're going to do right now. And when you're faced with, when I'm talking about choices, I think some of you are going, oh no, I'm going to have to make changes. I'm going to have to make choices. And what do I do? And how does this work? And what if I make the wrong choice? Well, you just make a choice, you take a step, and you course correct. And you go, do I like this? Do I not? It's a lot like cooking. So when you cook, you put your spices in and your salt and pepper, and then what? You take a little taste. Oh, it needs a little more salt. Oh, it needs a little more rosemary. Oh, I could put some more basil in there. Oh, I don't need any more pepper. So you correct it like that. Well, it's the same thing in life. You make a change, you take action, you go, oh, okay, I like that. No, I didn't like that. Okay, great. So the best choice for you is whatever feels right to you in this moment. And I think those of you, especially those of you from my generation, so those of you born, before the 70s, I think parents were a little easier, a little more liberal after the 70s, which doesn't mean what liberal means today. Okay, it was not the craziness that liberal is today, but if you had a choice, you had like two choices. You had to choose between two things, and whatever you chose, you better like it, because you were kind of stuck with it. So now, we have to get out of that mindset of, oh, if I make a choice, it's forever. I have to live with it and I can never change it. I think we need to get out of that mindset and get into a more open and expanded mindset of, okay, I'll make a choice. I'll see how it works. If I like it, great. If I don't like it, take a step back, course correct, what was I really looking for, and then act on that one. And you just keep that process of going back and forth of course correcting, because eventually you'll arrive at something that works for you until it doesn't. And that's an important thing to realize, is that when it doesn't work for you, that's when it's time to make another change. Elaine says, this helps me to quit judging myself for past choices. Good for you, Elaine. Yes, you can't judge yourself for past choices because at the time that seemed like the best choice, and it probably was. Maybe it was the only choice. Again, think of those of you who got married young and who were in love, and then maybe you're divorced now, or you're contemplating divorce, or you've been divorced for years, and you look back and you think, what was I thinking? How could I have married this person? Who was I? What was I doing? Like, my mind went on vacation and my body just stepped into the white dress and walked down the aisle. And you can't judge that choice, because if you're going to judge a choice you made, and I'm saying this because it's absolutely impossible to do, you have to put yourself in the same mindset, in the same energy, in the same emotional and mental and spiritual space that you were when you made that choice. And that's impossible, because the only reason you think it's a bad choice is because you've experienced the consequence of your choice. You've gone through that experience and you're standing on the other side going, yeah, I didn't like this. I don't really like sushi because I'm not really a big fan of raw fish. I like the vegetable kind of sushi. I don't like the fishy kind of sushi. But the first time I had sushi, they put this little dish of green, the wasabi sauce, and I went, oh, guacamole. I love guacamole. So I because it looked like guacamole to me. It was green and it was kind of mounted in the dish, and I didn't know it was wasabi sauce. Nobody told me. So I put a big old helping of it on my sushi, and I took a bite. And I'm usually a very polite eater. I had to spit it out. My eye started watering. My nose started running. I started gagging because I had taken like that much wasabi, which was really, really spicy. And that was the last time I did that. So the next time that I had sushi, I saw the wasabi, and I took a tiny little pin drop of wasabi and a whole bunch of that ginger, because I really like the ginger. So, oh my God, the chicken feet. I'll have to repost the chicken feet article. Yes, that was also my experience with chicken feet, which, again, the first time I had dim sum was at a restaurant when I lived in Sydney, Australia. And a Chinese family, a woman I worked with that I really got along well with, invited me to her family's like Sunday dim sum. And it's a really great dim sum restaurant. So the whole family was there. There were like 30 people, and then me and the grandmother and the aunts and uncles and the parents, and I was kind of the guest of honor. And they bring in, so in dim sum they bring the little carts around. They have all these little dishes on them, and they actually gave me the chicken feet, which is kind of a delicacy, and it was considered like this really, I was like the honored guest. I got the chicken feet. There was no way that I could have eaten those chicken feet, that I just could not put chicken feet in my mouth. So I had to very gently and respectfully tell them that there's no way I can eat this, but I gave them to the grandmother, because she was actually, the elder, so she was the honored one, and I gave it to her and said that, I defer the honor to her, and she was thrilled. She ate all those chicken feet. But yeah, that I'll have to repost that article. Thank you. I kind of forgotten about that. So the reason I'm saying that is because, again, going back to this judgment, the only ways you can judge something is because you know what happened. So it's not, judging is kind of it is counterproductive, but it's actually really counterproductive, because you wouldn't know if you hadn't made that decision. So you can't really judge your choice because you're judging after the fact. So yeah, and it's also kind of it's a waste of time. So anyway, Jamie says the same thing happened to me with the wasabi. Yeah, like I said, I learned my lesson. Let me tell you. You know how some lessons it only takes once? I learned my lesson with that wasabi. After I saw wasabi, I would take a tiny little bit of wasabi. I did like the crystallized ginger, though. That's always really good. Okay, so here's an interesting comment from Cynthia. She says, I reached out to a family member. I thought it was my guidance to do so and was completely ignored. Now I'm on the other side of that choice, wondering why I listened to the guidance. I will not be doing that again. Well, is it possible that you needed to see not just that family member, okay, take the label off, not just that family member, but that kind of energy? So I'm going to ask you, who else in your life exhibits that kind of behavior or leans towards that kind of behavior, and that family member kind of reminded you that you don't need to try and connect with those people because you're not going to get the outcome you want, and the connection just can't be made. So if you look at it in terms of what that person showed you and what kind of behavior they have, I think that guidance, really either helped you deal with somebody else in your life, or is going to help you deal with somebody who's coming into your life, and you'll immediately know, okay, this is like that person, and no, I don't want to do this. I can't make this choice because it's not going to serve me in the long run. And this is where too, so our choices are, and the reason I'm saying this is because of what's happening this month, but also like moving forward. So we're becoming more energetically sovereign, and it means that we can become more choosy about who we allow into our circle and who we allow to connect to us and the kinds of connections that we make. So there's very little value to you and to any of us in reaching out and making an effort to connect with someone that can't connect to you. They have these relationships now have to be reciprocal. There has to be an equivalent exchange of energy. So the time, energy, and effort, the emotion, the love, the caring, the support that you give to somebody has to be returned back to you. There has to be a balance now. So often we get involved in these relationships and we're giving 90% of the energy and they're giving like this teensy little 10%, and we go, I never get anything back. Well, you're giving to someone who has nothing to give to you. So when you set this intention to have good, strong energy boundaries, you allow people in your life who can respect your boundaries, but who also can have reciprocal relationships with you, that they're equivalent. And if you notice, all the stuff that's going on in DC right now, like the trade agreements and what President Trump is doing, what is he always talking about? Fairness, equivalence. We can't have these hundreds of billions of dollar trade deficits because we're not charging any tariffs and they're charging 300% tariffs. So there has to be an equivalence, and this comes down to a personal level where we aren't the ones who are giving out all the energy and holding up all these relationships. We have to be receivers as well as givers, and in order to be receivers, we have to give to people who have the capacity of giving back to us. So I wouldn't judge that. I think that was actually a good thing. P.S. O'Neill says, what if you've been manipulated by a narcissist and they try again? I cut it off. People who are narcissists, that's a whole different breed of person, and you need to be really careful around them because they're very manipulative. So, I think it's okay to give everybody the benefit of the doubt once, but in the words of Maya Angelou, when people show you who they really are, why would you ever doubt them? And, it's okay to get, fooled by somebody once, because that happens to everybody. But if you continue to push and you continue to try and get what you want from somebody and they continue to treat you badly, then, the fault in that situation is actually with you and not with them. Hang on a second. Let me look here. Okay, so Sarah says, I have someone who's my group that's beyond needing, demanding my instant reply, and which I've already spelled to them. As today I did free readings, had simple steps on how to join. But it's as if I'm speaking Greek and only a few have figured it out. Okay, so two things. One, stop giving free readings because people don't value things that they don't have an exchange for. So they don't value things they don't pay for. And the other is maybe that's a sign to you that this group, hang on, my eye itches, that this group is maybe, like you said, they look at you like you're speaking Greek. So what does that mean? It means that you're talking above their capacity to hear you. It's like when you talk to children, you use simple phrases, you use small words, you say things very simply and very directly because they're little kids. If you don't want them to do something, you have to say, I don't want you to do this. Or if you want them to do X, you have to tell them, that very clearly, I want you to do this. So for example, when I was at my daughter's house a few weeks ago, I do a lot of organizing and cleaning when I'm at my daughter's house. So I was cleaning out her pantry, which she lives in a very large house, a very old house, so like 130 years old, and it has this massive pantry. And of course, it needed to be straightened out. And while I was cleaning out the pantry, I found a protein bar. So it was only one, and I was hungry. I hadn't had lunch, so I took a little bite and I put it on the counter, and I was taking little bites of it. And Nora, my little 2-year-old granddaughter, came in and she asked me for a bite. So I gave her a little bite, and I took another bite. And she came back a couple minutes later and wanted another bite. So I gave her the last bite. So she comes back a few minutes later and she wants some more. So I said, well, there's no more. And she looked at me and I showed her the empty wrapper. And I said, Nora, I gave you the last piece. There is no more. And she looks at it and looks at me, looks at the counter to make sure I wasn't telling her a story and said, okay. And she walked out. But she's 2. So this is how you have to talk to little kids. So I think the problem is you have a group that is your capabilities are far beyond the abilities of the group. So maybe it's time for you to change groups or do something different with them. Or I honestly too, and I know your situation, I honestly too think that you are getting a lot of hints that it's time for you to go. I've said, and I did this when I lived in Kansas City for 10 and a half years, we hold energy in places and we bring in frequencies and we bring in energy, but all places have an energy ceiling. Everything has an energy ceiling. It's like the place where they can't go any far above that. Like it just isn't going to go any higher than that. At least not in the time frame that's going to be acceptable to you. And I think that a lot of us who've been in these places are seeing that, okay, we brought in all this energy, we've made all these changes, we've facilitated a lot of healing, and we've kind of reached that plateau where nothing else is going to happen there unless something something else happens, but that's not generally something that we can bring about. Somebody else has to do that. And when you come to that end, that ceiling, there's nowhere else for you to go. Like your energy is too big for that place, and that place is too small to fit your energy. Emmy, true to form, says sometimes we need a rude awakening message to prevent us, or we keep on hanging on. That's true. Sometimes you just have to get like no really loud before, before we get it. Katrina says, oh, thank you. Katrina says, I love you. You've helped me so much. Many blessings. Thank you, Katrina. Okay. Luann says, I have cerebral palsy, right hemisphere, stunted brain growth. It's hard for me to tap into all the tasks that I need to do. Luann, I think that one of the lessons of having some kind of I don't want to use the word disease, it's just disability, is that we have to learn, our limits. So we have to learn the limits that we can go to, and then we have to ask for help for the rest. And here's something about asking for help, and I think this is especially true in your case. One of the ways other people work out their karma with us is to help us, is to provide some kind of service to us, is to be of service to us. So we can often get an opportunity that where we're stuck somewhere and we need help, and somebody comes along and helps us, and what we don't realize is that at some point, they owe us something. There's a karmic debt there, and this is how they repay us. And I think that's very true for you. I think that you have a lot of karmic debts with a lot of people on both sides of that. So where you owe them and they owe you. And one of the ways that they pay you back is by helping you. So you're going to have to get, a community of people that maybe you can do something for them, but they certainly have to do something for you. And I would suggest that you start building that, because I think that's important for you. It's important for you to realize that this is one of the ways that you have chosen to serve others, is by allowing them to be of service to you, of allowing them to help you. So, Anshal wrote a really good question. I'm still trying to figure out my purpose. Like, what exactly am I supposed to do? All right, that is an excellent question. So thank you for answering that, because you would not believe how many people have the same question. First of all, the whole concept of life purpose is highly romanticized, highly abused, and it's one of those clickbaity things that people who don't know what they're talking about use to get interest and get people into their programs. So we have a soul mission. Our spirit comes in to any lifetime with a mission, and the mission has to do with some kind of healing. But think of healing as recalling our energy that's been distracted and dispersed and being held hostage and hijacked by traumas and soul wounds and things like that. So we have that soul mission of bringing all that energy back together. And then our life, the lifetime we have, is the purpose, is how this mission is accomplished. So your life purpose is to fulfill your soul mission. And what are you supposed to be doing? Well, whatever you're doing right now. Because until you're ready to make a change, and until you're ready to see that change spread out in your life, you are going to have the exact same lessons come to you over and over again. The same kinds of people, the same kinds of experiences, people who were just like your family or just like the challenging people in your life, until you get that energy back together. And then you can create a different soul mission and then create a different kind of purpose to fulfill that mission. So if you feel that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, think about that in terms instead of, what do I want to do that's different from what I'm doing right now? Because that's where your soul mission is. So that's the expression of that next step is, okay, I'm doing this and I'm ho-humming and I'm bored to tears. There must be something else. I want to go climb Mount the Himalayas, or I want to go, travel Europe, or I want to go write a book, or I want to do all these different things. When you get that together, that's when you are able then to figure this out for yourself. And the energy, the lifestyle, all the details start coming together, because you're not trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with this piece, when the reason you think that most likely is because you're done with that piece. Kind of like Sarah, what am I supposed to do with all these people? Well, you're done with those people. You're done with that energy. It's like, me leaving Kansas City. I was done with Kansas City. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I couldn't move. I felt like I was in prison, like I was walking through glue every day. And as soon as I moved, everything shifted, because I was done there. I was done with that experience. And again, this is happening a lot, where we're literally done with experiences and we need to move on. And the way that our soul says, hey, you're done here, is by making us unhappy. We get bored. We're looking for different things. We want change, but we're so worried, I didn't finish this. Well, we have this definition of being finished that's kind of unrealistic. So we think, everybody gets together and they all hold hands and they sing Kumbaya and we're all one big happy family. Sometimes being finished is, as Emmy said it so well, looking at a situation and realizing I'm done here. I'm, it doesn't matter what's going on in this situation. My part is finished. I am finished. The situation may not be finished, like the way I want it to be or like I think it should be, but my part in achieving that is finished. It's over. So I have... So Liz says, I have a friend, yes, who speaks to the dead, and so many people would take advantage of her. It is very draining. And so she's a professional medium. So she needs to charge for her services. If somebody really wants to talk to their deceased loved ones, they'll pay her. Do you know how much, what's her name, the Long Island medium, do you know how much she charges? It's like, I don't remember how much it was. It was a lot. It was like $1,500 or something like that. And she has a 3-year waiting list. So if she's that good, then they'll pay her. Luann says, I'm a Leo. It's hard. Yes, and the eclipses are in Leo too. So think about what happened in '98 because those eclipses hit you pretty hard. Janet says, I need help figuring out my purpose too. I feel like I'm supposed to help people, but not sure how or what direction to go in. So the problem with feeling like you need to help people is you put yourself in a position of becoming what I call the martyred healer, where you are in service to people as a servant rather than being of service to them in some form of mastery. So whether it's mastering losing weight, getting out of depression, of recovering from being suicidal, like one of my business clients is, you have to not look at it in terms of I want to help people. You want to help them do what? There's a sense of overcoming. There's a sense of changing their lives and be changing their focus, doing things in a different way. Be clear about that, because if you say I want to help people, well, that doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean anything. It's define that. What? Help them do what? Help them remodel their bathroom or redecorate their kitchen, or like when I go over to my daughter's house, I help her. I cleaned her refrigerator, I cleaned, defrosted her freezer, I organized her pantry, I did a ton of laundry, I cooked a bunch of food, and I love doing those kinds of things. And I don't get to do them in my house because I don't have a house of 15 people like she does. So I go over there, I get to cook big meals, and I get to clean and organize, and my house is clean and organized. So I get to go over to her house and do hers, and she's very appreciative, and I get to do it for a few days. And then I go home and go, oh, it's so peaceful at my house. So instead of looking at it, I'm supposed to help people, I think that's also one way of approaching a soul mission that may be really important from a point of kind of diminishing its importance. So you want to avoid pushing yourself forward as an expert or someone who can really help people, accomplish something big or important. So you say, well, I just want to help you. Well, that kind of, again, it doesn't really mean anything, but it also takes the importance of your own mission out of the equation. So I would word that a little bit differently. And if you take my business program, which is launching this month, again, I'm getting ready to launch Soul Wound Healing. For those of you who asked me about it, your email will come out tomorrow. Hi, Cynthia. Yeah, the karmic debt. So what's interesting is, we think about karma and, challenges and difficulties, but karma takes on a lot of different forms. So sometimes the person who changes your tire on the side of the road, the Good Samaritan who pulls up and helps you do something, is the person who, he or she has some kind of karmic debt to repay. And that's how they repaid it. Boom, it's paid. Now they can go on and live their life. And they don't have that hanging over their heads anymore, and neither do you. I wrote about this today on Twitter years ago, and I mean, this is like 30 years ago. No, it was more than 30. It's like maybe almost 40 years ago. I had someone try and carjack my car. So I was stopped at an intersection at a red light, and for some reason I didn't have the radio on and it wasn't blasting away, and I don't know why, because I usually did. and I hear a click, and I look over on the passenger side, and I was driving. At the time, I had a 76 Monte Carlo, which was a pretty good sized car. I look over, and there's a foot coming into my car, and the door is open. So I got so scared because I knew some man, it was a man's foot, was trying to get into my car. So I didn't even look. Luckily, God watches out for fools and little children. I floored it. I went through that intersection. The man fell out of the car because as soon as I saw his foot, I just hit the gas. And you've got a 358 barrel. That car really ran. So someone said I had a 77. Yeah, they were great cars. The prettiest cars Chevrolet had ever made, aside from the Camaro that I used to have. So I went through that intersection. I went through the next two before I finally stopped, figured I was far enough away that he couldn't run after me. And I'm just lucky that I didn't get hit because I was just driving. But so why am I telling you this? Oh, so the karmic debt. So what was the karmic debt there? Well, this was a man who obviously was sneaking into my car. He was going to, I'm sure, didn't have good intentions, and I managed to escape. I managed to get away from him. So that ended whatever that karmic debt was between us. I got away, and he didn't get to hurt me. So that these karmic debt comes in all forms, and people fulfill their karmic debt, and sometimes in very simple and very elegant ways. Somebody comes up and says, "Hey, you need help with this," and yes, so I need help with it, and they're there to help me. And isn't that interesting that they're right there, and I need help? The other day I was in Costco, and I bought a shelf, and it had kind of a big box, and it was in the cart. Costco has those massive carts, and I had lifted, so I was at my car, I had lifted the box to get it out of the cart, but I didn't realize that the corner of the box was stuck in the corner of the cart, and I'm trying to push it over, and the cart was starting to roll away, and I had the box in my hand, and it was kind of heavy. And this man comes over, and he says, "I think you need some help with that." And I feel these arms just lift the box up like it was no problem. This big old guy, he's at least 6'5", massive arms. And he just kind of lifts the box up like it was a box of tissues. And he says, "Do you want it here, ma'am?" And I said, "Oh, yes, thank you." He put it in my car. And I thought, well, that was really nice. So I said, "Thank you." And he said, "No problem." And he took my cart, and he went in the thing with my cart. So I didn't have to put the cart back in the little cart corral either. So, but this is how simple it is to to let somebody close a karmic debt with you. Let them help you. And if you open yourself up to that and realize that you're not being, lazy or inefficient, or you're not being, somehow not sovereign because you can't do it all by yourself, then you allow these miracles to happen in your life, and you get people who are just literally passing through your life, and as they pass through your life, they're fulfilling karmic debt with you, and then it's over, and you got something done, they got something done, and everything's cool and everything's clear. Okay. So Mitch says, Scorpios are having a hard time because we're in Cancer, which is a water sign. And of course, we have all this water energy. We've got Neptune in Pisces, and the sun in Cancer, and Jupiter in Scorpio. So we have all this water energy right now, and it can be really hard on an emotional level. So Mitch says, "I've been purging and processing so many emotions, memories with these heightened energies. I'm a Scorpio. Is there anything I can do to help myself as this continues?" First, you can not blame or judge yourself. So that has to be the first thing. And, purging is like, imagine you're having like an energetic and emotional colonic. So what happens when you have a colonic? Well, the stuff goes through the tube, and you watch it as it goes out the tube. You kind of need to see that cycle. Also think of the revolving door that I've talked about. So as these old emotions come out, what's coming in to replace them? And I think it would be really helpful for you, because I think you're visual like that, to imagine, okay, this grief is coming out so joy can come in. Because all the energies we hold, they occupy space in our energy field. So if you say, well, I want joy, okay, so you set an intention for joy, well, what has to happen? Well, anything, any energy that is not aligned with joy has to leave so the joy can be there. It's like painting a wall. So say you're going to paint a wall, and I like to paint, so I'm going to use that as an example. Say you're going to paint some walls in your house, and you're going to paint 3 of the walls white, and you're going to paint 1 of the walls orange. So how many paintbrushes and how many rollers do you need? 2 paintbrushes, 2 rollers. 1 for the white and 1 for the orange. Why? Well, because if you paint the wall orange and then you use your orange paintbrush to paint the white wall, guess what color your white wall is going to be? It's going to be a weird color because it's not going to be white. It's going to have orange streaks all over it. So think of as the old emotions you're purging, so the old stuff that's coming out is actually making room for something else. So what do you want to replace that with? So think, see the things that are going out, they're going out because you want something new, and it has to do that. It's like replacing the mattress on your bed. So if you buy a new mattress, what do? Well, when it gets delivered, you pay the guys an extra $20 to take your old mattress, because you're not going to stick your new mattress on top of your old mattress. Then your bed would be this high and your sheets wouldn't fit. So you have to see that there's a replacement going on, not just this is all coming out. So of course, being a Scorpio and being this water sign, there's a lot of water sign energy around right now. Also, Mars is retrograde in Aquarius, which is square your Scorpio sun. So that probably has something to do with it too. I'd look at your chart, go to astro.com. You can run your chart and see where Mars and Scorpio are in your, see where Aquarius and Scorpio are in your chart. And that'll kind of tell you the, like what's going on and why you're having this. But I think that's part of the problem. So Mars retrograde in Aquarius means that all this past stuff is coming up, but it's squaring your sun, so it's causing a lot of conflict, because squares are conflict. Alrighty. So Carrie says, how many of you love Q? I love Q. I follow Q all the time. Q has been lately, kind of a divisive force. So there's people who believe it, people who don't. There's people who think he's a LARP. There are people who think he's really great. And Carrie says, how do you trust that President Trump is looking out for us? Well, for one thing, he's making his promises. But I think what we don't realize, because we just can't. It is impossible for the majority of people, and I'm talking about like 99% of people, to understand the depth of corruption, of evil, of just simply just horribleness that is in DC. Now, I used to live in DC, in DC area. I didn't live in DC. I worked in DC, and I did as an entrepreneur for a few years. I actually did work in DC, and the amount of corruption, the dirty dealing, the lying, the cheating, the duplicity, where people were so self-serving, they literally do anything to get ahead, and I mean anything. It was depressing. So I don't think we understand, we can see, and don't forget, we've had 30 some years of corrupt presidents, like really corrupt presidents, especially Obama. So we've had all this corruption, has had a chance to get a really firm foothold, and now it's all changing. Well, that's not going to change. President Trump says drain the swamp. How many of you have ever had a backed up sink? It's it can be hard to unstop your sink. You have to sometimes just take the whole sink apart and put it back together. So I don't think we understand the level of evil that's in Congress, in DC, and, in the government, in the corporations, and the lobbyists, and the in all of that. We just can't. None of us live that way. So I think, given the amount of evil he's facing, I think Trump's doing actually a pretty good job. The fact that he's still alive is probably a miracle, because I'm sure that many attempts have been made on his life. I don't know if any of you, but I don't know if I could hold up under that kind of pressure, from the mainstream media, from, people who attack him all the time. Look at the horrible comments that come from his Twitter page. And I know a lot of those are bots, but they're still pretty horrible. I'm not sure I could hold up under that kind of pressure. So, can we trust him? We don't have a choice. Let's put it that way. He has to deliver, because if he doesn't, we are all sunk. And I don't mean that, and I mean that very seriously. So I think we have to trust that through President Trump, through whoever he's working with, through whatever else is going on around him, that somehow there are forces that are guiding this train into a much more balanced and certainly beneficial, route, not just for us, but for the world. So this is a global problem. And I think that people are really going to start flipping out when all the information about what's going on with children starts to be revealed. And it's pretty terrible. I know enough about it that I am just like, it just nauseates me. And I don't even know all of it. So there's a lot that's coming out that is going to be very, very hard for people. Again, not just here, but because this is a global issue. This isn't just happening in the U.S. This is a global issue, and I'm talking about satanic ritual abuse, child murder. What do they call them? People who eat children. There's actually a word for it. I saw it the other day on the internet somewhere. They're called pedovores. So you have pedophiles, people who abuse children. You have pedovores, people who eat children. Are you kidding me? It's just like you just kind of want to go and hide somewhere. So, I think we have to, and it can't be about President Trump. It has to be about whatever force is directing us towards a more sovereign, loving, compassionate world. That's what we have to focus on. What energy can we put out there that this is the intention for us, the world that we live in, the country we live in, the lives we have, that we have love and compassion and dignity and justice and kindness. That's what we need to focus on, and that's what we'll create. And whoever participates in that process is going to participate in that process. We have to stop, saying, okay, but it can't be Trump. Well, he's part of that equation, so it can't not be Trump. But President Trump doesn't work by himself. He works with a whole host of people who are all trying to right this wrong and bring this whole situation. And if you listen to President Trump's speech, he talked again tonight about taking care of this child trafficking and everything that goes along with that, again, which is a pretty horrible situation. It's worse. Think of the worst you can imagine and then multiply it by 1,000, and it's even worse than that. Emmy says, the word free attracts low-hanging fruit that just want to drain you. So Shelley says, it's all about energy and no God. So what is God? So the God of the Bible is an energy. It's not a human. And it's not, well, this is what I believe, and I know a lot of you believe the same way. So God is not human. God is not male. God is an energy, and it's a force. So when God spoke and he said, I am that, I am that. God said, I am in all things. All things are part of me, and I am part of all things. So it is an energy. And to focus only on God of the Bible or God of the Christians or God, as a religious figure is really limiting the expression of that energy, because it's more than that. It's in everything. So we are all expressions of God. Everything on the planet is an expression of God. And we can't minimize that or tone that down or label it and say, okay, it's God and God is male and God is human, because that's just impossible. God is not human and God is not male. Once years ago, when I was a lot younger and a lot, let's just say, less inclined to be disagreeable. Actually, I was dealing with a very disagreeable person. So who was kind of challenging me on religion, and just having a discussion that, I'm not a religious person, and I wasn't I wasn't going to start quoting Bible verses, although I can because I've read the Bible multiple times. And I said, explain something to me. If every other creative force in our world, creative entity, is female, how can God possibly be male if God is the creator of man and the universe and everything that we know? And that was the end of the conversation. So that was the end of that. Okay. Yes, low-hanging fruit. Everything's energy. That's right. It's all consciousness. Laura says, I had a 77 Monte Carlo. Those were the best cars. I loved my Monte Carlo. Of course, now you look at the car and go, oh man, that's like an old car. But it was actually cool back then. It was my first car with power steering. So how many of you remember cars before power steering was a standard? Like when power steering was like an add-on, and it was a really expensive add-on. So one of my first cars, my very first car was I think it was a 66 Chevy Nova that my aunt sold me for $50, and it leaked oil so bad I had to carry a case of oil in the trunk and put oil in my car all the time. My second car was a 69 Chevy Camaro 302, fastest car I've ever owned. And it had these, it was a big car. It was probably a good 2 tons because back then cars were made of steel and they had, chrome bumpers, and it didn't have power steering. So there was no such thing as driving those cars with, one little finger on the steering wheel and you've got your phone and you're texting in the other hand. When you had to turn a corner, it was both hands on the wheel and you had to turn the wheel hard. And, I learned to drive on those cars. So when I got my Monte Carlo, it had power steering. And sometimes I would oversteer the car because I was so used to having to turn the wheel so hard that I would turn the wheel too hard and then I'd kind of go around a corner on 2 wheels. But this is kind of what we're going into now, and I'm glad that came up because I want to say this. We're getting into a time where the energy is moving so fast and everything is so, everything is falling into place so quickly that we have to be careful not to literally oversteer, overthink, overjudge, overcompensate because it's happening. And we have to look at letting energy get in and then sit into place, and then course correcting. Do I like this? Do I not like this? What about less of this and more of that? And then we take that next step, and then we let the energy come in, and then we course correct. We have to get used to doing that rather than waiting for the right moment and the best moment. And is it perfect? And if it's not, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to sit right here and wait for it. Well, because that perfect moment doesn't happen. So we need to learn to move in different ways, kind of like going up from my, 66 Chevy Nova to my car with no power steering to my car with power steering that you really could turn the steering wheel with one hand, with one finger, because it had power steering, which before that, I think it was only available on Cadillacs, and it was really expensive. I think I looked at a car one time, and I think adding power steering was $600. At a time when a lot of people didn't even make $600 a month. So that was expensive. I mean, $600 now, most people's car payments are more than that. But this is when, people didn't make that much money. So it's important for us to, Here we go. Diane talked about, because I asked a question very early on. I said, do marriages that are made under Mercury retrograde have a less chance of succeeding, or do they tend to end in divorce? And she says, when she got married, Mercury was retrograde. It was retrograde when she got this aha moment that said, I'm not in the right place. So every change in that marriage, was, had some kind of interesting Mercury retrograde component. So it was either retrograde or direct. So, well, I wouldn't she says, I find it difficult to clear that bad taste when I ponder about wanting or not wanting a relationship. I wouldn't let, that, remember that Jackson 5 song, "One bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, girl." I wouldn't let that, like, say, okay, I had a bad relationship, so I'll never have a relationship again. Because if that was the case, nobody would ever have a relationship, because everybody's had one bad relationship. I think that you may have ignored your intuition, given this person too much leeway, um, not really paid attention to what was really going on in the relationship, and and put aside things that were actually really important to you. So I think it's more important for you to look at it as, okay, how did I not honor myself and my intentions, and how did I not honor myself? That I have strong boundaries, which doesn't sound like you did, but did I honor my boundaries? Was I, supporting myself? Was I making sure my needs were met? Was I giving and not receiving? And was that okay? Well, obviously it was okay, because you were in that marriage for 13 years. So something was going on there, until one day you went, done, I'm finished. And then that's when, of course, everything had to change. But until that, there were things that happened that you either said, "Oh, that's okay, I won't deal with it now," or, "Oh, that's not important," until it became important. And that's why it's important, I'll use that word again, not to judge yourself on the past, because you're looking at the present, you're looking at the past from the point of the present. So it's kind of like anything. I mean, like a food you don't like. How do you know you don't like it? Well, you tasted it. Okay, I don't like that. How do I know? Because I just tasted it. But you might look at it and go, "Oh, that looks really good." And then you taste it and you go, "Oh, no, that's not something I ever want to put in my mouth again." So Laura says, "I'm sensing a romantic past life with one of my roommates. I can still feel some sort of attraction from his side, which I don't know how to deal with. Is it best to avoid him for now whenever possible?" I wouldn't do that. I mean, I would, see what happens. I'd take it really slowly and get some additional insight into, okay, is this a good past relationship? Is this one that ended up really badly? Is this someone who constantly broke your heart in different lifetimes? I mean, the attraction is there, but that doesn't mean that the connection is going to be, fulfilling and loving and etc. Okay, right. You asked for the joy. So Liz says, "I've felt that my purpose has been to assist ones to pass over. At first I fought it, but I've learned to accept it. It's been easier." Yes, I have. She asks, "Have I heard of this?" Yes, because somebody has to help people, and a lot of people need this. Just pass over gently to get closure with this life, to get closure with what they've done or haven't done, and then cross over. It's like a tour guide. So you're a tour guide, for people who want to cross over. And the best way to do that is, and there are jobs like this, to work in a hospice, to to be a counselor for people who are in in that transition stage or in the final stages of life. There's lots of opportunities there. It takes a very special person to do that. So it takes someone with great compassion who can honor that person's journey and let them go with dignity and strength, and encouraging them to take that step because it's the right choice for them. It's not something that a lot of people can do. So if you feel this is your mission, I would pursue that. So it's not something that a lot of people are able to do. It also takes a very special person to do that. Janice says, "Q freed me from second guessing my buying into being a conspiracy theorist." I just want to remind all of you that the term conspiracy theory was actually created by the CIA in 1966 to describe people who weren't buying the official narrative that JFK was shot by somebody in the book depository. So they didn't want people asking too many questions and getting to the truth, which we all know had nothing to do with one shooter, and questioning the CIA. So basically it was an insult. It was a way of, demonizing people who were looking for the truth and thought that a conspiracy actually existed, which it did. So, you can wear your conspiracy theorist hat proudly. I do. I suspect all of them, and I'm usually right. So basically, you're a conspiracy theorist if you suspect that a conspiracy has happened and what is being touted as the truth is actually not the truth at all. Amy says, those creepy Joe Biden. Oh, yeah, Joe Biden is a horrible. Oh, God, those creepy. I wouldn't let that man anywhere near my children. So Donna says, I'm at a choice point regarding my floristry work. I'd really like to create something small from home, but unsure whether it will be successful and that I may need to work in retail, which is not my preferred option. So like anybody else in any kind of business, hang on, I gotta get a drink. So if you're working like as a florist, then number one, if you work from home, you don't have all the overhead of having a retail store, but you have to pick a market. So what do you do? Who do you serve? And how do you market yourself? Like, is there some kind of florist? So you want to do weddings, or you want to do banquets, or you want to get a couple like big hotels and you do their flowers every week or something like that. I think what it depends on for you, Donna, is picking a market that you like and that you want to serve. So you don't depend on just walk-in business. You actually do, kind of full-fledged florist work in something that you want to do where you can have, set clientele, so you know how much money you're going to be making every month. Okay. Paula says, why do we have to work so hard to remember who we are and connect to spirit? Wouldn't it be faster and easier if we were born to remember? Well, we are born to remember, and then we forget because the journeys, or the human journey that we have to do, requires that we eventually make our way back to spirit. So the only reason we're here is because at some point we have soul wounds, we have traumas, we have those kinds of things that have separated us from spirit. So our journey back to spirit is the purpose of our lives. That's what our life is for, to bring that scattered energy back, to experience certain challenges and go, oh, you know what? I'm stronger than this. I don't need to do this again. I know what my lesson is. I'm calling back all my energy that I have stuck in this trauma. And that's, so we do remember, but we have to continue, to pull ourselves back together, so to speak, to become energetically sovereign again, so that we have the full use of all our energy. And we don't have it when we have like all these traumas and all these griefs and all this sadness and all this stuff that we have to process. The day we realize, I don't have to do this anymore, I don't want to be in this space, I'm going to call my energy back. That's when we remember. And look at the word re-member. So we put the members, the pieces, back together. Ooh, Emmy says, I had a 69 Camaro Super Sport. I had a 69 Camaro Z28 with the little flipper thing on the tail, on the trunk. It was such a cool car. Yes, they were a lot of cars. And mine had a stock 302, which actually was a Ford engine. It was the same engine that they put in the early Mustangs. Man, that thing would fly. Even though it was pulling almost a 2-ton car, that thing would move. Oh, Amy asked a tough question. Why do they eat children? Is that their way of stealing their energy? Yes, or because they're just complete sickos. So yes, it's all about energy, and it's that whole Sumeria, Talil thing that is, basically the Sumerians, the Babylonians. It's the basis for this Satanistic cult, and yeah, it's just revolting. I mean, that's I'm being kind. I can't even think of a word that's worse than revolting. So Elaine says, I had 2 travel cases stolen from my car in front of my apartment. As I carried stuff into the apartment, I called the police, and they found one that had my supplements in it. I guess they didn't want your supplements. And the other's missing with my bath stuff. My daughter said it wasn't good. I didn't go out when they were there. I still feel unsafe, and I can't move now. So I guess that was a lesson to you, I think, for a couple things. One is you have to be careful. So you have to make sure that you keep your energy close, not being afraid, but just be mindful of, walking outside with your angels around you, walking outside feeling protected, telling yourself you're protected and safe. I think you need to be aware of your environment. And I think that that's actually a good thing for you, Elaine, because I think that sometimes, I'm going to say you're too trusting, but I think sometimes you're too unaware, like you're not paying attention who's around you, what's going on around you. My dad, one of the things that he was he was involved in martial arts, and he did a bunch. My father was involved in a lot of different things, but one of the things he taught me was how to be aware of my environment. So wherever I go, I know who's around me. I know where the entrances are. I know where the exits are. I know, if there's anybody weird, I kind of stay away from them. He kind of ingrained this in me so much when I was growing up, especially when I was a teenager. He made me like do it over and over and over again until literally I just walk into a place and I can tell you how many people are there and who is where and what's going on, and does anybody look strange, and do I need to pay attention to anyone. I think you sometimes get so much into your own like energy space that you kind of forget what's going on around you, and it's not a good thing for you. It's kind of unbalanced. So I think this is making you be more aware of yourself in your surroundings, but it's also part of that integrating 3D and 5D where you're actually integrating those things together. Artie says, I want to get pregnant. Huh. Hang on, last one. So Lucy says, my family thinks I'm kooky, but it's an energy that I feel. I may look into the hospice. They are a true blessing for the family and the ones passing. Yes. And hospice is one of the few places that I can think. I think the whole industry is called like end of life care. And that includes like hospices and people who counsel, people like that who are crossing over. I think it's called end of life care. And it's a job. I mean, there are people who do this. This is their profession. Like I said, it takes a very special person to do that. And in order for anyone to do it, they have to be able to deal with the family's grief and not, and kind of balance that with the person, because when someone's ready to go, they go. So it takes a very special person. If you're called to do that, it's because you have the level of compassion and the strength to be able to handle that. And I would consider that an honor. I really would, because you are, kind of directing people through the final stages of their life, and you're helping them get closure, and you're helping them find peace and then die with that dignity. So good for you. As far as when you're going to conceive, I feel like you need to do something, like there's some like nutritional things you have to do. I feel like you need to take care of your body for the next few months, about 3. Eating good food, taking the right supplements, magnesium, vitamin C. I think you're deficient in B vitamins, so take a good B vitamin complex. Zinc comes up too. So I would do some research on, those supplements. And Dr. Mercola is a good source for that, Mercola, because, he writes a lot about that. And I certainly wouldn't read what's on the vitamin bottles, because they're way too much. Artie, if you want to develop your business, I suggest that you look into my business course. So it'll be marketed on this page next week. Also, if you're on my mailing list at enlighteninglife.com, it'll go out to that list as well. Laura. Laura asked the funniest question. So she says, I met a man in Greece. We talk every day and like each other, but I can't decide if it's worth spending my resources to visit him again in August. He works 12-hour days on a tourist island until mid-October. I'm having a hard time being patient and want to find out more about our compatibility and attraction, but I don't want to waste my time and my money. Thank you for being so honest, because that's actually a very honest assessment of this situation. So you don't want to waste your time and your money. So not only do you want not waste your money and time like going over there and then you can't spend any time with him, you also don't want to waste your energy by committing to something that may not work out or that isn't what you want. So I think you have a couple of options. One, go visit him after October when he's available, or go visit him in August, and while he's at work doing his thing, although I feel like he's going to be tired when he gets off work, you're out visiting, looking at Greece, seeing the countryside, deciding whether you want to live there or not. So I think there are other options. You say you're not patient, but relationships in particular, like everything else, they need time to mature and to work out and to for things to happen. So I think it's important for you to look at, do you just want to barrel into a relationship, or do you really want the commitment and the intimacy and everything else that goes along with it? Because I think you're not quite sure, and you're not really into it as much. Okay, Elaine says, yes, I was tired from my drive. Yeah, I think so. I think you also didn't lock your car. Ooh, goodness. Okay, so here Christy says her daughter had a kitchen fire. Wax flew on her body and she slipped on something and fell. She has second-degree burns. Good grief. She can't use her hands. She'll be forced to move. She can't take over the lease because she doesn't have verifiable income. Blah, blah, blah. 3 people live in the house. Okay, and she's 34. Your husband doesn't want her to live with you, which is probably, I honestly don't blame him. So I have 3 kids, and I adore my children. I'm always there for them. They know that. But in my house, we have the 3-month rule, and I told my kids this from the time they left home, which says I'll help them out if they get into trouble. And it's not going to be every other month either. They know my boundaries. But I'll help them out, and they can stay with me for 3 months. After 3 months, they're on their own. I think your daughter is, number one, not grounded, which is why the fire happened, and she's doing 10 things and thinking about other things. So everything in her life is the drama because she's just not grounded. So life just kind of happens to her. It's like just falls on her head. So obviously she has to get out of that apartment. She has to pack up her stuff. I would call a few friends and you get that done. It looks like you're not going to have a choice there. But I would also make it very clear to her that she can come and stay with you temporarily while she heals. Again, boundaries, ground rules, and no cutting corners with her. As soon as you cut a corner with her, she accepts that as, okay, I can do whatever I want. So I think you need to tell her, because she is 34 and I have one of my children is 35, and sometimes I have to have that discussion with, I'm not dealing with your drama. You're old enough to take care of this. I'm not involved. So I would make it the last time and let her know that it truly is the last time. And I know she's your daughter. You can't just, have her out in the street. But I just see her as like, her head is here, her body's over here, and she's just not grounded. So she's not capable. I mean, she can do it. She just doesn't do it. Like she's just grasping. Like she's one of those people, life is just complicated for her. It's hard. She's not organized. She's not grounded. So nothing flows in her life. So I think you and your husband are going to have to sit down, lay up some ground rules, agree on them, tell her this is the ground rule, and if she breaks the rules, then she's out and she has to go find another place to live. Yeah, you're going to have to pack up her stuff and and put it in storage. I also feel like this happens to her. I don't want to say often, but this is one of the ways she deals with change is she incapacitates. So she does a lot of self-sabotage. She completely incapacitates herself to deal with change, so she doesn't have to. And that's, something that she's going to have to deal with. You can't rescue her all the time. So she's going to have to, get serious about some things in her life. But she's only going to do that if you make her. And by making her, I mean, you tell her, I'm not doing this, and then you stick with it. So when she asks you, or when she kind of falls down and her life falls apart and she goes, help me, you just say, nope, sorry, you used up all your help cards. You're on your own, which is something I had to do with one of my children, and it was very hard because I really felt like, oh my God, I'm abandoning him. But I wasn't. I just couldn't deal with the drama anymore, and it was starting to interfere in my life, and my life isn't complicated, and it was getting very complicated, and I didn't like that. So I'll take a couple more questions, then we're going to go, because Mimi says, I think they're called death doulas. That term is familiar. Cynthia says, I was a hospice nurse for years. It was the most rewarding and fulfilling job I ever had. We had a picture on the wall that said, hospice workers are not hired, they are called. Anshal says, I asked about 111 and like seeing 1111 and 911. That's just kind of, I mean, you can find that anywhere on the internet. Doreen Virtue is actually the expert on the double numbers. That's just, that like pay attention. Like that when you see double numbers, it's like pay attention, like your guides are talking to you, and to start listening. Kelly says, made brave moves, all is clearing, new job, happier. Will I ever have dates again? Opening and looking, reducing baggage. I think for you, the answer is, first of all, one thing at a time. So you've made brave moves, you've cleared a lot, you have a new job, you're a lot happier. I think you're rediscovering yourself. So get to know this new you that's more confident, that's happier, that's in a much better place, that's feeling much more aligned with yourself, before you open the door and like bring somebody else into your life. Will you date again? Yes. And I feel it won't be until autumn. So for me, that's September, October. But I think right now you need to take the time to enjoy the you that you're experiencing, which I think has been a really long time coming. Okay. So Anshal says, I have an interest in being a tarot card reader, to help people overcome their problems. Is it a symbol? Are the numbers like 1111 that the universe is supporting me and confirming it to you? First of all, the universe always supports us in everything we do. And it doesn't matter what it is. The universe doesn't judge us. So it doesn't say, oh, that's a bad idea, I'm not going to support you, I'm going to block you in every turn. Although that sometimes happens. But the idea that the universe can confirm that something is right for you is completely wrong, because the universe has no say in what you do. The universe just says, yes, the universe is there to support you. You put out the intention, the universe supports your intention. You've actually asked me the same question every single week, and I give you the same answer every single time, and that is get started. Set up a little website, figure out what your rates are, start telling people what you do, and just do it. This is your own lack of confidence. It's your own lack of, the sense of yourself, your own lack of trust in your abilities. Just get started. If you don't get started, what's going to happen is everything else is going to stop. Like all the other doors are going to close, and then you're going to have to do this, which is actually what happened to me when I first started having to use my intuition in a professional capacity. I couldn't find a job anywhere, even though I had this great resume. And I had no other choices. Like all the other doors shut, and I had to go through the one where I was a tarot card reader, and I don't even know how to read tarot cards. So just get started. I mean, like I said, you ask me the same question every week. I'm starting to know your... Okay, Artie, you need to schedule a session with me, okay? So this is like, I don't mind answering one question, but this is like a whole bunch. So go to enlighteninglife.com/connect, and it'll show you how to schedule a session with me. Okay, so the plot thickens with Elaine. So not only did she have her car doors open, she had put the stuff outside her car, and it was sitting on this in the parking lot. Okay. You know, for some, okay, so if you put something on the side of the road, people assume that you don't want it and they'll take it. I think what happened is people saw the stuff on the side of the road or by your car, and they thought that it was something you didn't want, and they just took it. I think you were careless, and you know, as you said, you were tired. So this is a couple things. One is pushing yourself beyond your capacity, not recognizing, okay, I'm tired. I need to, you know, I need to take care of myself first, rather than I need to unload my car and get everything out. Or you could have asked for help, but I think you were just careless. I think you just weren't paying attention. You were careless. You put this stuff outside. Someone saw it and goes, oh, look at these cool things. I think I'm just going to take them. And I think that's what happened. I don't think they necessarily meant to steal them. I think that they thought that you didn't want it. So there it was. You know, I think it's a sign to you just to be, again, more aware, more grounded, more on point and on purpose with what you're doing, and not let yourself get distracted. And I think you're more distracted when you're tired and you haven't been taking care of yourself, or you haven't gotten enough rest, or you're pushing yourself when you really just need maybe to take a 15-minute break. Okay, Anuj says, I want to expand my business. I know, you ask me this question every time too. Sign up for my business program. Okay. Okay, Smita, I see 888s. Go look on the internet for the meaning of 888. Okay, I am going to, oh, Liz, you're welcome. And congratulations on finding this, and also good luck to you. I would look into that. You know, like I said, it takes a very special person to do this, and it really is a calling. Not, you know, it's not just a job. It is a calling. It's really important work. It's very delicate work. It requires an enormous amount of compassion and love and caring, and I think you're capable of all those things. So I'm going to end. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I will see you probably next week. Also, soul wound healing is available. You'll get that you'll get that email actually tomorrow. It's going out. And I'm also offering a certified practitioner version, which I'm really excited about. It's the first time I've ever made my work available, and doing it with an event, actually a live event too. So that's all coming up. Retreats coming up. I'm talking to the hotel tomorrow. My first one will be in Sedona, and I'll do one in Virginia Beach. So Sedona, Arizona, and Virginia Beach. And Virginia Beach, we'll do it at a hotel by the Edgar Cayce Institute, so we can go visit the Institute. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys like my colors. You know, I love this shirt. It's just a little cotton shirt that I got at TJ Maxx, my favorite place. I'm going to make a big shout out for TJ Maxx. I love TJ Maxx. And it's great to be here. It's great to see all of you again. I love you all. Have a wonderful week. I'll be talking to you over the weekend. And we have a soul wound trauma class on Saturday. You're going to get the invitation for that. It should be in your mailbox in a few hours. So we're going to work on soul wounds this month, and business and retreats. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody. I love you all. Good night. Thanks for being here, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.